Hello. Well, I found out that you can't pause and then continue a live stream. So I've had to start a new one to pick up where we left off. So let's see. Just setting things up. Okay. Okay, right, we're ready. So I've got my tea. And now back to the hard work of dusting dinosaurs. So next is the Troodon from the recent Walking with Dinosaurs movie. I say recent, it was a few years ago now. The batteries still work. They make some quite nice bird-like sounds. And as far as action figures go, that's not too bad in terms of realism. There are nice wings on the arms, and they are accurate to a certain extent. So yeah, not too bad. It does look a little bit sleepy though. That's the only problem I have with this one. It looks like it's just woken up. Okay. I'll just put the camera down slightly. So this is a UKRD figure, another one of my childhood favorites. This was one that unfortunately got a bit moldy when I stored it in a shed and didn't properly wrap up the box. It got damp. Hi Patrick, I'm glad you found the new stream. So this particular Ankylosaurus, it says 1992, so I would have been about 12 years old when I had this. This was a favorite, and it got covered in black mold, which I was thankfully able to clean up and salvage and save it to life. Hi Jetor, I'm glad you found us too. This one is Batat. I think it might even be the first Batat I've dusted today, and could well be the only Batat in my collection. I don't think I was even aware of this line until a few years into starting the Dinosaur Toy Blog. It just wasn't on my radar. I don't think they had a very wide distribution outside of America, and so these were news to me, and I decided I would go for at least one, and found the Uranosaurus to be particularly pleasing. We looked at another Uranosaurus earlier on today, which had a beautiful coloration, the PNSO miniature version. Can't see it now, but the same is true for this one here. Really striking colors, nice bright red spots with yellow background, and beautifully sculpted. It's a really wonderful model. And as I say, one of my few Batats. I don't even have any of the new ones. These are unremarkable. These have just ended up. These were from the front of a magazine by the BBC called Andy's Dinos. They were just giveaways. This here was actually a wedding gift. It came from Germany just a couple of weeks ago and was one of many little Dinosaurs that had all been attached onto a bowl, which was given to us as a wedding gift. And I don't think they realized quite what it was, because the other figures were random Dinosaurs, but this is a original Dimetrodon from the Carnegie collection by Safari Limited. So quite a rarity these days, at least compared to the Dinosaurs. So I was really happy to receive this. It's not very dusty as a result of it being so new. Going through the collection one by one like this makes me realise just how many Bullyland figures I have. And this is another Bullyland Protoceratops. The Protoceratops was a special for a German museum. I can't remember. Museum Korbacht, it says. And this one, our loyal Foramite Libra helped me to acquire this one. Well, we don't have Target here to search for Batats, so the only way that we can get Batats are through the online stores. I did have Batats. I think I had the whole set at one point in my shopping basket at Everything Dinosaur. And at the very last minute, for some of the reasons we were talking about before, about issues of space, I decided not to order them. I was really ordering them to review them rather than ordering them because I wanted them to go on display. And so I decided at the last minute to change my mind. Maybe one day. This one here is just another little random Dinosaur Triceratops. There's nothing particularly special about this. I suppose I just liked it. Looks a little bit cute there. More Bullyland, and this is the Ammonite. One of two Ammonites, I think, that they produced, this German company. Nice. I think it represents a Carnotaurus or something similar, and very well sculpted. It's great to have an invertebrate. The only thing is it has this little support sculpted into its shell here, which means that you can display it on a flat surface, but ruins the illusion a little bit if you are playing with it. Not that I do play with it very often, although it would be great in the bath, wouldn't it? I wish I had one when I was a kid. This is the Nigersaurus, the Wild Safari by Safari Limited figure. Funny looking critter. Have I reviewed the Papo figures already, Mikhail? Well, I've gone through a few Papo figures as part of this process. I'm not really reviewing them so much as just commenting on them. But I think every single one of the Papo figures to date has already been reviewed properly on the Dinosaur Toy blog. So just go to dinotoyblog.com, go to the Papo page, and you can see the full reviews of every single Papo figure to date. This one is another UKRD figure from my childhood. It's interesting how the same companies keep popping up. Obviously, I was quite limited. And this one, I think I might have got this from the Early Learning Centre, which is a shop in the UK that sells toys and things for children and babies. And this was part of the UKRD line. Oh no, this is the AAA, not UKRD. This is AAA, so AAA, and this is the line that they sold in the Early Learning Centre. And I think they might still sell AAA figures in the Early Learning Centre. I haven't been in to an Early Learning Centre for several years. No problem, Mikhail. In fact, talking of Papo, this is the original brown Velociraptor, hugely inspired by Jurassic Park, but a beautiful sculpture nonetheless. And this is one of the iconic original Papo figures. Articulated jaw, and as I understand it, quite difficult to get hold of. In the previous video, I mentioned that I worked in Dublin, and there was a toy shop just up the road from the university where I worked, and I bought the Schleich Parasaurolophus from there, and I also bought this Papo Velociraptor from that shop as well. Several years ago now, I was in two minds about it because it felt like so much of a rip-off. But I'm glad that I did go for it because it's a really beautifully sculpted piece, hugely reminiscent of the Jurassic Park Velociraptors. In fact, it's a better Jurassic Park toy than the official Jurassic Park toys in almost every aspect. And it would have been a shame not to get it. And now they're rare, so I'm glad I did. The feathered Velociraptor by Papo is also good, but I reckon I actually prefer the scaly one, not because I think it's more accurate, but I just think it's got a lot more character. And although the feathered Papo Velociraptor has feathers, they aren't they're not the most accurate feathers. There's some issues with it, and style wise, I think I prefer the Jurassic Park inspired version. When it comes to feathered Velociraptors, I would go for the wild safari one over the Papo one. This one I'm just dusting up now is another one of the classic Invicta toys. This is the T-Rex. You can tell its age because it's dragging its tail. And like the Triceratops that we talked about in the previous video, this one is covered in scoots that run all the way along the side of its flanks and along its spine. Very crocodile-like integument, which you don't see very often on Tyrannosaur figures these days. And as usual, Invicta just completely knocked it out of the park when they did their models. And despite being outdated in many ways, I think this is still my favorite line. And although they're inaccurate, I still think they are the most realistic line in terms of looking like real living creatures. They're just brilliant. I love them. It's difficult to quantify exactly what we mean when we talk about realism, but the Invictas, they have a weight to them that makes them feel like they are living, breathing creatures. They don't seem like toys. They're like little scaled down versions of the real creatures, even though they're inaccurate. Okay. Here are two figures in an embrace. The one here, the smaller one, this is the Walking with Dinosaurs Leolenosaura. This was packaged together with the Utahraptor, which I've looked at previously. And I suppose because it's small and doesn't take up much plastic, and the Utahraptor is also quite skinny, they could afford to put two figures in the same pack. But as a result, I think this, because it's so small, this one is a little bit more difficult to find than the other ones. Very few small ornithischian dinosaurs in toy form out there, so this is quite a rarity. And it was being embraced by this very satisfied looking thumbs up Iguanodon. So we talked about the difference between UKRD and AAA. Any guesses on which one this is? I think it's AAA, but shall we see? Yeah, it is AAA. So the AAA and the UKRD do look very similar. I don't know if they had the same sculptor or if they just, because they were sculpted around the same time, they pick up on the same sorts of themes and memes in terms of posture and pose and color. But they are almost indistinguishable sometimes. But this one's nice, and as always, yeah, you can't have an Iguanodon without having its thumbs up. This is a Sinraptor. This is the Carnegie collection Sinraptor. One of my favorite dinosaurs at the moment, because the Sinraptor skeleton was one of the highlights of the Dinosaurs of China exhibition, which I curated recently in Nottingham at Woolton Hall. And so I didn't know much about this dinosaur before the summer, but now I've become very familiar with it. The cast that was on display in the exhibition was a cast of the type specimen, which has pathologies on its ribs. It has broken ribs which have healed, which show that the animal was injured when it was alive. And it also has evidence of bite marks on its skull. So the Sinraptor obviously led a very violent life, and we said as much in the exhibition interpretation. This is another Carnegie collection figure. This is the Saltosaurus. Absolutely smothered in dust. But underneath the dust, you can see the armor scoots. Not many sauropods are known to have armor, but some titanosaurs, like Saltosaurus, certainly did. It's a really nice figure. The only problem is its head is a little bit silly looking, not particularly realistic. Otherwise, there's quite a lot going for it. It's interesting how a head can make or break a figure. This one is an Alloxornis. I think that's what it's called, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. And it's one of the characters in the recent Walking with Dinosaurs movie. This was part of the Blind Bag series. Quite nice to see a bird, very similar to the Confuciusornis model that we looked at earlier, because it's got this pair of long tail feathers. Yeah, definitely more little ornithischian figures, and UKRD and AAA have similar painting styles. Yeah, they do. Very basic, usually they're just sort of 2 or 3 tones, dark on the top, light on the bottom. So yeah, you're probably right about that. Simple. Okay. This is a Jurassic Park figure. I think this one's been reviewed on the blog. It's by a company called Dakin or Dakin, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Dakin. This is 1992 Amblin. So these are originally, this one, if you look closely, there's a little hole in the back just there. That was where it was attached to a keyring. I removed the keyring because I wasn't interested in having this in my pocket. Look at the size of it. But it makes a lovely figure, and I think it was one of several in the set, of which I think that all of them have been reviewed on the Dinosaur Toy blog. If not all of them, then most of them. Yeah, I always quite liked it, even though we all know that Dilophosaurus did not have, or almost certainly did not have, a frill like this, and it doesn't really reflect the appearance of the movie counterpart particularly well. But it's a nice striking colour, and these patterns on the back, very snake-like. I always thought it was nice. Here are 2 more dinosaurs interacting. This is a Quetzalcoatlus by Toyway. Oh wait, no, it's not Toyway, is it? I can't remember. It's not Toyway, it's Vivid. VTG. I can't remember now. I think it might be Vivid. And that was in the jaws of the Disney's dinosaur movie Carnotaurus. This was an electronic one, which its eyes don't light up. There was one that had eyes that light up. I didn't like that one, but I did like this one, which I think, yep, batteries have gone. But this is a little bit more realistic than the ones with these light up eyes. And if you look at the details on the head, it's a very well sculpted figure. Lots of articulation as well. Actually a bit too much, because all of these different bits, they come off. So that end of the tail comes off, that piece of the tail comes off. So I don't know why they decided to do that, because you don't need to have multiple points of articulation in a tail. But there you go, they decided to do it anyway. And I think the head also rotates and the jaws open and close. I always thought it was nice. I thought they got the aesthetics of the Carnotaurus down to a T. Not completely accurate, of course, but just superficially, I think it's an amazing design. I've got a table here to the side of me. I'm just laying all of these figures out before I dust these surfaces and put them all back. This one is a Jurassic Park Junior figure. These were figures aimed at toddlers. And this one is an Iguanodon. You know that it's official because it's got the JP logo, so you know if it's not Jurassic Park, it's extinct. And this was part of a line of very cartoony versions of dinosaurs and characters from the movies. And not from the movies, I think they were just random people. And I just really like that one. This one, it has an action feature. If you push it down, it jumps up. It's got a sort of a very slippery feel to it, but it was always like that ever since it came out of the box. I don't know if there's a reason for it. Quite bizarre. That one I bought probably in the mid to late 90s. This is one of the colour variants of the Safari Carnotaurus. So we've just had a look at one Carnotaurus. This one is a little bit smaller. This is the original version. There is a more recent version that replaced this one. This is Carnegie, and the one that replaced it was also a Carnegie collection. When was this? This was in 1996, so it's one of the older Carnegie, from the, not one of the earliest from the 80s, but sort of the middle of the middle life of the Carnegie collection. So they hadn't quite found their groove in the 90s, I think. A few years later they did. This small figure is a Protoceratops, nice and spotty, and this is a Safari Limited figure as well. I think this might have, I think the same sculpt you can get today in tubes, but I didn't buy this in a tube. I think this was in a bin. Safari Limited, China. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if this was part of a set. I don't think it's Wild Safari. It's certainly not Carnegie collection. And I don't think it was part of a tube. So maybe they just sold like a bucket of these and you could buy them as one-off purchases. And maybe since they've used the same sculpt again for different things. I've seen this also knocked off many times, the same sculpt in different sizes, in different plastics. So this is one of the models that have been knocked off several times. Have we ever done a best of Bellisaurs poll on the forum? I don't think we have. It would be a good one to do in the future. What's this? Ah, that's a bit of sandpaper from when I was doing a dinosaur model. This one is another one of the Sue figures. The Sue, the T-Rex. So we looked at the T-Rex previously, two versions of it. I had a repainted version, and this is for the Field Museum. Sculpted, I believe, by Doug Watson. So this is the Hadrosaur. I can't think off the top of my head which genus it is. And it doesn't seem to say. And Natatitan, it says. I don't know if Natatitan is a valid genus anymore. But anyway, it's a large hadrosaur, represented here in a sort of medium size figure. We've already taken a look at the monochrome version of the Invicta Baryonyx. This is the coloured version. This is the figure that I had when I was growing up. And I bought this in the Isle of Wight Zoo. And this is when, what's the date? 1989. So I probably bought it when I was about 10 years old or so, 10 or 11. And of course, you can't have a Baryonyx figure without it holding a fish. This figure has always had on the tail a little blemish, almost like it's been touched with something hot that's melted into the plastic. I don't know why I didn't notice it when I bought it, but I remember seeing it when I was looking at the toy in the car on the way home from the zoo. A Natatitan is probably a Natosaurus. Yeah, I think you're right. This is another Invicta. This is the Australian dinosaur Muttaburrasaurus. I wonder if Invicta had have continued going, whether they would have eventually ran out of colours, because every single dinosaur has a different standard colour. The orange of the Muttaburrasaurus. I suppose they just have to go for shades in between, which is what they started to do already. This is a tube figure of a frilled shark. This is by Safari Limited. I've got some random things on the shelf amongst the dinosaurs. It doesn't really have much of a place there. I've been doing this for so long, it's starting to get dark outside. So I'm impressed that you're still with me, some of you, from the beginning. This one is another Carnegie, Allosaurus. I think the sculpt is one of their original sculpts, but it was repainted. No date on this. Interesting, some of the figures have dates on the underside, some of them don't. Yeah, never particularly impressed with this one. Okay. This is another walking with dinosaurs. I said that my favorite figures are on display. The ones that I don't like as much end up being stored underneath the bed. That's why so many of the figures that I've been dusting today are the original Toyway Walking with Dinosaurs figures, just because they are probably, after the Invicta figures, my favorite line. In fact, when I first started the video a few hours ago, I used Walking with Dinosaurs as the background music. I think I might put that back on, actually. It's a bit too quiet without any background noise, so bear with me 2 seconds.
Imagine you can travel back in time.
Okay. I'll also move my mug. This is the Protoceratops. Of all of the Safari Limited figures, I think this is probably the best. And maybe after the Allosaurus, it might be my favorite figure. Maybe I'll turn the music down a bit. We've got Kenneth Branagh confusing us. Where'd I put my duster? It's over here. So yeah, that's the Protoceratops. There's something about it that's very reminiscent, I feel, of the Invicta models, and maybe that's why I like it so much. It's just got that fine attention to detail, very sleek, realistic look. I know there might be one or two minor inaccuracies in the arms, perhaps, and maybe the pose, but I can forgive it because it's just such a wonderful looking model. This is the UKRD Tyrannosaurus. Is it? Yeah, it is. Just checking it's not an AAA. So another one of my childhood figures, a very striking blue. I can't imagine that T-Rex was really a bright blue color like this. All of these UKRD figures, I think, are 1990s. This one's 1992. Noticeably, it's a tail-dragging T-Rex the year before Jurassic Park came out. And on the topic of Jurassic Park, here's another Dilophosaurus with the frill. The frill is, of course, removable. Come on, yeah. Which I always thought was a really nice action feature. I wonder if there's any batteries left in this. It was part of the electronic series. Not really much of a sound. Just a faint groan. It's like the sound is just stretched out to eternity. Poor thing. This is also slightly discolored from being in the sun. You can see there's some yellowness to the plastic on the top. Never mind. This was your favorite Jurassic Park toy, Jetor? It was definitely one of my favorites. There were two electronic figures in this set. There was this one and a Velociraptor. This was definitely superior, I think, to the Velociraptor, which didn't really look like the Velociraptors from the film. It's still making the sound. It's on its last legs, I think. This one is a Megalosaurus by Invicta. Again, it has these very crocodile-like scoots running along its back, which many of the Invicta models also have. This was also one of the earliest figures in my collection. I think I might have even had this bought for me. My parents, I think they bought it when I was on holiday in the Isle of Wight in the late 80s. Is there a date on this? 1974? That seems very early, if that's right. It's difficult to read. More likely 84, which would make sense, because I probably, yeah, I was a child in the 80s, so it was probably 84. This is a ankylosaur. I don't know what company makes this, if any. It says Euoplocephalus. It says made in China, but there's no company name. It's not a, I wouldn't describe it as a Chinasaur. It's almost too good to be dismissed as a random Chinasaur. There's a bit of thought gone into the sculpt, so that one's a bit of a mystery to me. I suppose technically it's a Chinasaur if it hasn't got a company name, but it maybe one of my viewers will recognize it. If so, you can always let me know in the comments, if comments are available on these live streams after the fact. I'm presuming that once the live stream is finished, the videos will be available to watch in retrospect, and that they'll be able to you'll be able to comment underneath. But I'm not entirely sure about that. It's a new experience for me. This is the penultimate figure on the main shelves before I get to the marine reptiles on the top shelf, and this is an incredibly dusty Protoceratops with blue spots, and it's either AAA or UKRD. Any bets? I'm going to go for AAA. Well, it says it's Triceratops, and it's obviously not, and I can't see any brand name. It might say LM. So anybody who said UKRD was wrong, anybody who said AAA was wrong, it's something entirely different. I can't quite make it out. I think it says LM. Could it be a new line, never before heard of? LM. I don't know. It certainly looks very UKRD-ish and very AAA-ish. The full text, it's 1997. So quite old. Maybe it just says TM, maybe it just says trademark. Triceratops made in China. Light and magic. I don't think so. But I don't know. The last one here is just a little Chinasaur from the front of a magazine, which I bought recently. And that leads us to this bit here on the side. Yeah, I think it might be TM. It's really difficult to make it out because the text is so small, but I think it's trademark, so there's no company name. This one is another in the is it AAA, is it UKRD quiz. Place your bets. I think I know this one. I'm pretty comfortable and confident that this is AAA, and it is. And I remember buying this one from the Early Learning Centre in the UK. And not too long ago, probably in the early 2000s. I really need to take a trip into the Early Learning Centre and see what they've got these days. I've got no idea if they still sell these AAA models or not. I don't even know if Early Learning Centre is still going, to be honest. Here's a nice one. This one has beautiful eyelashes. This is by D'Agostini, a company who make collectible books, and their books usually come with a figure or two, little models. And the reason why I have this, I think it's a mummy Dilophosaurus, is because it was sold in an issue of the magazine that came with a plesiosaur. But they're really nice and cartoony. They sort of combine elements of cartooniness with accuracy. I think they've got a really nice balance there to make something fun and also educational to a certain extent. Not that I'm saying Dilophosaurus had eyelashes. But that's pretty fun. Oh. This is a yowie, an Australian sort of equivalent to a Kinder Surprise egg, I suppose. And this is a prehistoric whale. I can't remember off the top of my head what genus it's supposed to represent. Zeuglodon, I think. I can't really remember. There we go. And this one is it's a mammal. I'll put that one to the side. That one you can dust it. This is a plesiosaur. I don't know why it's down here. I think it's because it's a color variant, and I already have this plesiosaur model up at the top here with all of my miniature plesiosaurs. I'm not too fussy about having color variants, and I think, if I remember correctly, I bought this on eBay because I didn't recognize it, because the color is so different from the one I do have. And then when I unpacked it, I realized that, oh yeah, I've already got that one in a different color. I'm not much of a completist when it comes to color variants, but it ended up on the shelf nonetheless. This is just a modern tortoise. I'm trying to think where I bought this now. I think that this was a gift. I think that was a gift for me from my wife, who I think picked it up on a trip to Germany. This is a unique item. This is a 3D printed version of the skull of Aticodracon. Aticodracon is a type of Romaliosaurid plesiosaur, which I named and described a couple of years ago. And this is a 3D print based on a laser scan of the holotype specimen, or a cast of the holotype specimen. Unfortunately, the original skull was destroyed in the Second World War. It was a victim of the Blitz in Bristol. And the original skull, which is of course much larger than this is a hugely scaled down version, was destroyed. And luckily, the specimen was cast, and there are 3 casts of the skull in various museums, including one up the road from me in the British Geological Survey. And it's that cast that we laser scanned and used that as the basis for this little 3D print. So I own a sort of miniature version of a plesiosaur that I named. That's really special. Here is another D'Agostini figure. This is a woolly rhino. Again, I wouldn't really be interested in buying these usually, but it came with a plesiosaur. And when it comes to plesiosaurs, I am a bit of a completist. So I've ended up with one or two of these cute little fellas in my collection. This one is a Bullyland Stegosaurus. It's a miniature Stegosaurus. Nothing too special. This isn't really a toy, this is a plant pot. You can see the little plant goes in here. It's a cute little cartoon dinosaur, red dinosaur. But, you know, I should put a plant in it, really. This one is this one's another mammal, but I'm going to forgive it for being a mammal because it's a whale, and whales are amazing. This is a humpback whale by Coyote. I love these creatures because they have these really long wing-like flippers, which are quite reminiscent of a plesiosaur flipper. No other whale has flippers which are quite so long and wing-like, and it raises the question, why did they have these long wing-like flippers if they weren't using them for propulsion? And we know that they were using their tails for propulsion most of the time. They only use their wings occasionally. And I think that there's a lesson to learn here for how we interpret the wings in plesiosaurs and how they swim. Just because they've got big wing-like flippers doesn't necessarily mean they were using them all the time. And this is another mammal. Ugh. We don't need to work on that. This is a real ammonite. Goes in the fossil collection. And this is a magnet of a mosasaur from Disney's Dinosaur, very cartoony. And that's that. And I think it's getting late. And so I'm just going to dust these, put everything back nice and neatly, and then maybe on another occasion, I'll continue this project and embark on the marine reptiles up there on the top of the shelf. I've also got other figures dotted around that will also need to be dusted. You're right, it is from the Ice Age. Did I say, I said this was from Disney's Dinosaur, didn't I? It's Ice Age. So yeah, thanks for the correction, Captain Dino. It even says Burger King 2006. So this was part of a Burger King giveaway connected to the Ice Age animated film. So yeah, well spotted. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll call it a day now, and then maybe next week, I've got a day off, maybe next Thursday, and I might continue with all of the other figures. But before I go, I'll show you where we are at in terms of figures picked up and dusted so far today. So we've got everything down here. That's from the shelf we've just done. And then you can see the blank spot where the computer was. These are all of the figures that we have dusted today. So there's a big job now for me to put everything back nice and neatly and tidily. So that's all from me. Until next time.